And now it's my pleasure to invite Amanda McKenzie, CEO of the Climate Council, to make a few closing remarks on today's proceedings. Amanda is one of the best known public commentators on the climate crisis in Australia. Previously, Amanda co-founded the Australian Youth Climate Coalition and has served on renewable energy expert panels for the Queensland and Northern Territory governments. Amanda was the founding chair of the Centre for Australian Progress and is a former board director at Plan International Australia and the Whitlam Institute. She holds an honours degree in law from Monash University and an arts degree from Melbourne University. Amanda has won numerous awards, including being recognised as one of Westpac's 100 Women of Influence and being a finalist in the Telstra Young Businesswoman of the Year Awards. Thanks, Amanda.
Hi, thanks for having me. And I was reflecting as I've been watching the summit. I'm based in Melbourne, and we're in stage 4 lockdown here, and sometimes it's hard to find a little bit of inspiration sitting in the same room day in, day out. But it's been wonderful to watch such a fantastic event and hear so many great ideas for how we can energise our response to the COVID crisis, the opportunities, the possibilities for local government in how we tackle the crisis together. So there's a few reflections that I had that I wanted to share with you. The first is the sort of overarching piece that we are facing twin crises in Australia at this time. There's the climate crisis, which was made so clear by the bushfires at the start of the year that devastated many communities, but most of us were impacted by, I think 80% of Australians were impacted by the smoke. So all of us either knew someone or were affected in some way by those enormous fires, which I think brought home the urgency of the climate crisis to many Australians that perhaps have thought about it as an over-the-horizon issue. It made it very clear that the climate crisis is all around us today and is very much affecting us in a myriad of ways. Of course, many people had already experienced drought, particularly living in regional Australia, and that's been something that many Australians have been living with for some time that has been exacerbated by climate change. Then we've experienced the COVID crisis, and both the climate crisis and the COVID crisis are having huge economic ramifications that will be ongoing. So together, how do we get out of this economic, how do we tackle those economic challenges, and how do we make sure that we build an economy that is more resilient for future shocks? Because what we know is that obviously climate change will continue to impact us into the future. Unfortunately, there is a significant amount of greenhouse gases now in the atmosphere that will continue to have implications for our climate. So I think Helen Haynes put it really well when she talked about this as a once-in-a-generation moment to decide what we want the future to look like. And I think it's important to be encouraging all levels of government to be looking up beyond the current economic crisis and to be thinking at least into the future a little bit to say, how do we prepare? What do we want our country to be like? Because the way that governments choose to invest or put in place policies that respond to the current economic crisis will inevitably set us up for the future. And we can be orientated towards creating those win-win solutions that both get people in jobs, they enhance economic prosperity, but they also tackle climate change and help us prepare for this enormous challenge that will affect all of our lives in an ongoing way. I think it's clear that people across the country are hungry for solutions, and it was wonderful hearing so many solutions today and thinking about how local government has a really important leadership role to play. David O'Loughlin outlined the scale of local government, and I think when you put that together, because we often think of local governments as discrete, but when you put it all together, it's such a major player in the economy. This resonates with me for some research we did last year, which was looking at where climate leadership had come from in terms of actually getting emissions down over the last decade across Australia. And what we found is that it was those local solutions, whether it was projects or policies, that were firstly done by generally local government areas, including some of the larger ones like Canberra and the ACT, for instance, as well as City of Sydney, but also some other solutions that were done by far smaller local government areas that were then replicated in other areas. So local government solutions and innovations that are done now in response to this economic crisis that are thinking carefully about how we get the win-win solutions will serve both the area that local government operates within, but also those projects may well be replicated as they demonstrate their success. So I think it's important to be thinking about local government not just as each discrete area, but also how local government works together and then influences other layers of government. I mentioned the ACT, for instance. The reverse auctions were a key piece of policy that the ACT government started, which had then been taken up by most state and territory governments around Australia. And the Cities Power Partnership is there to support you and also to promote the projects that are underway that are successful in reducing emissions or tackling climate change. So we also outlined today the Clean Jobs Plan. Ella went through that, and we hope that the Clean Jobs Plan can provide a bit of a game plan for many different local governments and state and federal government as well. As outlined, there are 12 different policy solutions, and many foster the co-benefits that Richie Merzian from the Australia Institute discussed. So, for instance, the retrofitting piece that Holly also talked to, there's obviously a great energy saving piece, which is really important right now as we're looking to reduce costs for people, and we'll be looking to reduce costs for local government operations as well. Retrofitting's a great option, but it also reduces emissions and has the broader benefit of tackling climate change. The other one in our Clean Jobs Plan that really stands out is the organic waste management. There's been a lot of discussion in recent years about the need to reduce landfill and also to utilise that organic waste for improving soils and for agricultural land. So there's some nice win-wins there in terms of organic waste, as well as potentially capturing more carbon into soils. Urban green spaces is another one that provides amenity and health opportunities, and I'm very conscious of that living in Melbourne right now. Within my 5 kilometre zone, you just see everyone in lockdown using those green spaces for the amenity, for the opportunity to have a little bit of a connection with nature while it is a relatively difficult time for everyone. So I think Australians have never been more conscious of how important those urban green spaces are. And of course, one of the key elements in this is how do you attract private investment too? So we're not going to be able to do all of the solutions just through public investment and through local government programs alone. Where can we capture some opportunities to facilitate private investment? And Zoe spoke about this in some detail and outlined some opportunities. Our Clean Jobs Plan talks about it too in a broad sense. So solutions like utility scale renewables, for instance, unlocking $3 in private investment for every $1 in public investment. So those sorts of opportunities are wonderful in terms of being able to harness that private investment side to amplify the efforts that are being made. And Zoe outlined some fantastic additional ways of thinking about it and using some of those US models, etc. And so just thinking about this, I wanted to just end with saying we're part of something really big here. I think that many of us enduring this COVID lockdown experience, it can feel like our world has got a lot smaller. But actually the way that we respond and the way that local governments, as well as other levels of government, but I think local government has a really critical leadership role, will impact what our cities look like, what our urban areas, our regional areas look like, how we use energy, what those green spaces look like, the organic waste. So many parts of our community will be influenced by how we react to this current crisis. And I think what Mark's talk did was talk to that we're in this together with a whole lot of other cities and local government jurisdictions right around the world that are thinking about how do we make sure in this economic recovery we can work together and make sure that we're setting ourselves up for the future and that we're tackling climate change as well as ensuring our economic prosperity for the future. So I might end it there, David, but thank you for having me, and it's been wonderful to hear so many amazing leaders speak today.
Thanks, Amanda, for those really helpful reflections on what we've heard in the session today. I think it has been a great session. And that does bring us to the conclusion of Re-energise Australia, a Clean Job Summit for local government. On behalf of the team here at the Cities Power Partnership, I'd like to thank all of our wonderful speakers for sharing their perspectives with us this morning. I've really enjoyed hearing a range of opinions on how local government can make a strong contribution to Australia's clean economic recovery. I'd also like to thank the Cities Power Partnership team for all their hard work putting this event together today, and our AV partner Andrew Trodson at AV1 for doing all the work behind the scenes to make it look really nice and slick. Finally, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us today. 3 hours is a big chunk out of your day, particularly in the current circumstances, so I do hope that you've gained some helpful insights that you can take forward into your work. If you're a community member or from a council and are interested in learning more about the Cities Power Partnership, please don't hesitate to make contact with us via our website or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. But for now, that's all. Thank you again and good afternoon.